And so one of the questions that has popped up, Charlie, is what metrics do you review every single month? Now I'm going to expand this. Most people will think just business, but let's talk about business and then like the personal life.
Well, let's do it. I'm going to do my current ones. So I look at this right now is like the metric I'm probably most obsessed with in business right now is return on equity. So the best way to think about that is like I spend X amount of dollars every month to run my business. Maybe it costs you $100,000 a month to run your business. I'm like, how much profit am I turning that into? What's the return on the equity I'm getting in my business? Now, why am I paying attention to this one, or why do I love it and I have for a long time, is I look at it right now and it tells me how like efficient I'm being with the capital I'm using. Where if I just focus on like revenue, like you might be growing your business really fast, but you might be getting like sluggish as you get bigger. Where I feel like return on equity is if I'm spending more, I want to see that turning into more profit and the same ratio of profit as I'm going along, or even better, expanding as you go along. Where in the past, I must admit on this one, when I grew my first business, I was probably more focused on just like revenue and headcount and things like that. And then in turn, I was like, hang on, I'm becoming more broke as I get bigger. This doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't we be making money?
Yeah, it's thoroughly interesting because we basically look at the exact same thing from a business perspective. So one of the key things that I always tell people, whether I'm coaching them or looking at their business and trying to help people out, is there's two figures that me as a business owner. So from a business perspective, yes, there's context there, but me as a business owner in my context, the two figures I care about is, to that point, like the net profit as a dollar figure and the net profit as a percentage figure. Because if I don't have the other one just doesn't mean anything. Right?
You can cheat. You can totally cheat.
Exactly. And so it's like the two figures keep each other honest. And that because it's like if I make $100,000 profit every single month, but my revenue could go from $1 million to $10 million to $5 million, and I'm still just making the exact same net profit, it doesn't show me that I've got other problems. But if I was looking at the percentage, it's going from like 10% to like 1% to like 5% in those examples. And now I'm seeing the peaks and troughs of me going, all right, there's a problem here. I got to dive deeper into this. Those two metrics, they are the indicators to me of going, where does this challenge lead? Because then I go, okay, is it a sales problem? Is it a marketing problem? Is it an operational problem? Is it where does that sit? Or is this thing just cruising at optimal? Is it the exact same in personal? Like, do you just go, that's the same?
Not at all. Not at all. I wonder how many business owners out there right now are cringing a little bit listening to this because they don't know those two metrics themselves. So if you don't, I suggest you get very, very involved in them.
And I will say, before you continue, factor in if you've got business expenses to fund some personal expenses, whether it's a car, whether it's like rent or a mortgage or otherwise, like just be considerate of those numbers eating out of your net profit, right? Because if they're coming out of the business that are personal expenses for you, just be aware of that. There was a business that I was talking to you about, Charlie, that had about 8% hidden in this. And I was just like, wow. So really your net profit's higher if the business owner was not there. I'm like, so that's good. Like it's even better than it was just because there were these little hidden.
Can we unpack that quickly? I think that's very interesting, right? So you're telling me right now that the business owner is running so many personal expenses through their business and writing them off that their net profit is like, what was the difference again?
It was about 8%.
Wow. So 8% of revenue is their expenses.
Yep.
I got to use my infamous no comment.
But it was, and by the way, the net profit looked great. Like it was actually, I'm like, still a good net profit. And then you look at under like the financials and stuff, and like there were these pretty expensive hotels and flights and stuff. And I'm just like, what was that for? I was a mixed business and personal, and so I just kind of wrapped all up in the business. And I'm just like, so I've really removed some of this stuff. Like it's actually a really good position. Yeah, it is. Okay, well you kind of want like two of these. You kind of want like the before your personal expenses, your lavish lifestyle or something, and then like the rest. Like those are the two things that we kind of want to keep out. So I just wanted to put that one in there because a lot of people don't even think about that.
Huge. Absolutely huge. It's not surprising. Like Bianca used to bring home stories all the time about people running crazy expenses through their business and just like how they just destroyed their books. They just have a great company, but they've ruined it.
They just stop doing it.
All right.
Yep.
So on the personal side, completely different, right? So business, I'm very, very focused on return in equity. On my wealth and personal stuff, though, like net free cash flow is what I'm becoming increasingly obsessed with. So, like to unpack that a little bit further, I'm really happy with the assets I have. So tracking the asset prices, like the property prices or the share prices and things like that, is like becoming less important to me because I want to own those assets, right? I still track them, don't get me wrong. But what I'm really interested in right now, particularly, is like net free cash flow. So every month, how much net free cash flow, which is like after tax, after everything, are we creating to keep reinvesting in our assets and kind of spin that flywheel? So I really like to see that like month on month, I want to see that going up. And if it's not, or there's a change, that's where I really start digging in. That's where I want to know like why, what's going on here? Are we doing this right? Has something changed? Is the environment, whatever it is? And I find that is like my North Star at the moment.
Is that getting to you to a point? Like, is that when it hits a certain point, you pull the trigger and go, bam, I'm going to go into this thing? Or is this just because, okay, based on the globe, what is happening in the economy, in the global world, all these things, that opportunities will present themselves, and I just need as much free cash as I can to go and invest in it?
Well, I don't actually need the cash. That's the irony. And I'm like, business is being very good to me and us in general. And I look at it and go, well, like my business is where I'm getting my cash for living from.
Yep.
So I'm not particularly concerned about drawing from my portfolio. But one of the things I'm just really like looking to do in my strategy is like my strategy in wealth is cash flow.
Yep.
So if it's working, what should it be doing?
Yep.
Creating cash flow. And if it's not, well, then I really need to readdress what strategy I'm using here. Because if I'm running a cash flow strategy and it's not making any cash flow, I should probably change something. And if I'm inverse, creating some other effect I really want to know about. So like, again, I'll mention like growth's important. I'm not saying it's not. And it's definitely been a huge part of my strategy. But at this point in my life, I'm definitely more in trying to push those cash flow numbers up.
Yeah, it's interesting. So for me, the cash flow from assets is what I'm still focusing in on, albeit I am pondering the stacking the chips. Like how do I evaluate the cash that I keep putting into bank accounts? Because I think there's going to be more opportunities. I think that just having cash, especially in a market that is so, I don't know, speculation, like it could go really high, could go really low. I've got some good investments. Like I'm pretty happy where I'm at, but I'm pondering going, okay, well now stacking more cash versus buying more properties. I'm wondering if that's still going to be a better strategy. So for me personally,
whoa, you don't just get to roll on. Has this recently changed?
Has recently changed, yes.
So this has become, okay, so you were previously focused on probably similar to me, the cash flow thing, right?
Yep.
If I've got these assets, how much cash is it producing? Where now in the last, 3 months, you've shifted it to what are my reserves and liquidity because I think opportunities are coming.
Critical. Like I've even to the extent that I've started looking at if I was to refinance property to 80%, what does that look like? Like how much cash do I have available to me if a really great opportunity came across or things like that? So so I'm starting to ponder going, great, like what are my cash stores? What liquidity do I have available to me that I could just push a button and go crazy on it? Like those are the things I'm starting to like really ponder and stepping into. And I don't want to give the exact same answer as you, but it's moving across from like cash flow and like great.
But it really validates me, Grant. It really validates me. I feel I sleep better at night if you approve.
I can't say I can't like this can't be the exact like how we're doing the exact same thing, even though most of the time we end up doing it. It's like, but cash flow was like a massive run for me, and a cash flow outside of business. Like business.
I got to ask you another question on this. I absolutely have to. I'm like itching to speak, and I'm so sorry for cutting you off. It's definitely the worst thing to do in a podcast. So apologies to everyone who has to hear this. How often does what metrics you focus on, whether it's in business or in your wealth or personal life, change?
Now, that's a good question. So business doesn't. So what I focus in on business, if you went back to in SaaS, very different metrics. So when I was like a software as a service, like co-founder, which I still am, by the way, but the metrics I care about are still what I'm like the profit percent and the profit dollar figure. But I cared more about like usage, growth, Like, what are the things that like a high net worth individual or VCs or angel investors would want to invest in is really what I cared about. But in essence, most businesses I just care about like dollar profit and percentage profit. So that almost never changes. Like, it's no matter what business I'm in, like that's all I kind of care about. But from a personal perspective, the overarching, how much cash am I earning from a cash flow perspective and a capital, like what's my asset actually worth, is always there. But to an extent where I'm like, cool, as long as they're both in the green, like it's not the end of the world. And that's when I start looking a little bit more macro on going, well, do I think there's going to be a whole heap of opportunities coming? Great, I might stack some more cash. Do I think it's a really good buying opportunity? Yep, I might focus in on buying more assets, right? Or if opportunities just sort of come across my desk, I'll go, or like you and I talk about some opportunities, I'm like, great, that's going to be a perfect thing to buy. So from a overarching health, doesn't really change, but from a day-to-day operational, like these are the numbers I'm looking at to make sure I can pounce, yes, that changes.
It's interesting, right? Because I feel like there's some like, for example, it's like revenue, net profit, right? That's pretty much like what every business owner's got. Like, cool, they're important, I'm always doing it. But then if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll see there's like, a little something within it that they're more obsessed with. It might be sales volume, might be leads, right? They've always got these other little metrics that they're using as a little focus point for whatever's their pressing focus in the business. And it seems to change. And you've even referenced here like type of business. So if you're in service business, you're probably looking at different things than e-commerce, or potentially even looking at different things if you're in SaaS, or I know you are. And I just think about it, if you've got like a supply chain, like you've probably a lot of important metrics on how long it takes you to get goods and things like that become more relevant to you. So you start picking up like your specific ones, but then the wealth ones, it's kind of the same. Everyone's like, cool, growth and cash flow, got it.
Those are pretty basic.
Yeah. My net worth, how much cash it pushes off a month or a year, I'm good. But it's like it totally shifts. Again, you get these focus points. Yep. So like first few years, I think I was pretty obsessed with like net worth. I was like this.
As everybody cares about.
Yeah, but I must admit, as soon as I like passed a goal, I was like, okay, cool, don't care about that as anymore. And that's important, still going to look at it, but it's like this cash flow thing is like where I'm like, cool, I want to really like grow this out.
Yeah.
But I just think that this is like, it's a moving thing. So like depending on what's going to change, that's going to change people's metric, right? Is like one, let's just go with environment.
Yep.
So the world suddenly changes and the metrics you need to pay attention into in your business and your world change, right? Two is your goal changes. So like if you were very focused on growth and then you change into like stability, well, you need different metrics to measure stability. Or then thirdly is like on the personal side is like, if you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, you're probably going to track your metrics and what's good in those very, very differently as well. So I think it's like, even though we've been asked this great question, I almost want to throw it around to the idea that your metrics you track suddenly become more important based on the goal.
Yeah. And then you get to a point where now you're just opportunity chasing.
Yeah. I aim to get to that.
which I think is brilliant. Hey, fellow business owner, if this topic and value-packed short video has resonated with you at all, and you want to dive deeper into being a full stack business owner, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now.